Hi, my name is Sherwin Lai. I'm the Interp captain at Bellarmine College Prep for the 2019 to 20 school year. Today I have a skills video for you about gestures. Now, the reason I'm appearing on camera this time is because I'm actually going to demonstrate and show you some of the gestures, and that needs to happen on camera, obviously, so you can see. I do want to note that because of the way my software is set up, I'm unable to mirror the video. So whenever I do something on the right side, this is my right hand and this is my left side. So if you need to mirror that, you can, I trust you'll be able to figure it out with your brains. So sorry about that. Let's just get right into it. So first, I want you to think about these two questions. So grab out a piece of paper or open up the Notes app on your computer or phone, right? And and write down your answers to these questions, or think about them. By default, where should you put or hold your hands during a speech, obviously? And second, which gestures do you find yourself using the most often? So go ahead and pause this video and take that time to write your answers, think about it, etc. Okay, so hopefully you've paused and you've thought about these questions. Now, I want to address the first one really quickly. Where should you put or hold your hands? And there's actually a correct answer to this, and it's to your side or by your sides. To the side or by your sides. So, for example, when I'm not gesturing, usually, sorry, you can't see my whole body in this frame. I should have my hands here. Not up here, not here, not behind, not just gesturing commonly. An easy mistake to make is you kind of keep doing this constant gesture, and this kind of ties into the second question on the screen, right? Which gestures do you find yourself using most often? For me, it's this kind of gesture. I find myself using it a lot. Some people have different gestures like this, or like this, or as I have one student doing whatever. So make sure you're aware of what gestures you use often, and you try to minimize that frequency so it's not as repetitive. And then you should remind yourself that when you're not actively gesturing for a purpose, it's okay to just leave your hands by your side. In fact, it's best to do that. So it's not distracting all the time. So keep in mind those two things. So here are some gestures that I tend to think of categorize. Different people have different ways of thinking about this. This is just an approach I learned that I find useful. So first, there's the write down gesture. So that looks like this. Again, I'm sorry that the image is not mirrored, but just like this, write down. Left down, okay. Right up, left up. And then we have smush cake, which involves both hands. So smush cake, okay, so smush cake. Then pass cake. Out, right down. So it's right down, but you go further out right down towards the audience, right? Normally, it's kind of hard with this camera distance, but I would go out more. And you're approaching the audience more closely than just a normal right down. So this would be like right down, and then out, right down, out, left down, or yeah, you can't really see it, sorry. Out, right, up, and out, left, up, or out, left, up. Okay, and again, everything's mirrored. I apologize. So when might we use these different gestures? So whenever we have something down, a downward gesture, it's something stern, something important, maybe like a key point in your speech that you want to emphasize, or a statistic that has significant consequences, right? Something down, something more stern. I'm just making this up right now. Like after New York passed this really terrible law, suicides went up by 200%. Right? Something like, okay, that doesn't make sense, but you get the idea. Up is something more passive, something maybe you're just suggesting an idea. Think nice, right? So what if we didn't think of the problem this way, but rather a different way, right? Maybe you're making some suggestions. And then out is when you're talking to or about an audience. So when you're addressing, like, what can we all do, right? Then you would come out more. And that's with out, right, down, out, left, up, out, right, up. You'll see that the majority of these gestures involve only one hand at a time, with the exception of smush cake and pass cake. You may combine two hands, but you got to be really careful, because the problem I often see is people in speech, they overuse the two-handed gestures. I would only recommend using both hands at the same time to gesture if it's like an important point you're trying to make. But if you do it like 3 or 4 times a paragraph, it's probably too much. Try to keep most of your gestures on a one-hand basis rather than two hands. Again, you can use two hands, just not too often. Here are some combos you might try out. So let me do right down, left down, pass cake, and then smush cake. Right down, left down, pass cake, smush cake. Right, or right up, left up, smush cake, pass cake. Okay, you can play around with those. Another thing I want to cover, really important, action verb hand gestures. So make sure you use these as a tool to help your speech, not as distractions. So again, it's always possible to overdo these. Please don't. And these are to help you ensure that your gestures reflect your content. I'll give you a few examples of what I mean. For example, we can talk about an increase, right? An increase or decrease, right? For example, after I visited my parents more often, my loneliness went down. Okay, something like that, right? So your gestures are actually reflecting your content. Maybe we have to weigh our choices or balance out our interests, kind of have a scale kind of thing. Maybe we're talking about a process through which we go through. Maybe there was a first point and then a second point, a third point, right? And remember, when you use these number gestures, you don't want to just do this, right? Make sure your fingers are straight so it's clear. If you can think of any other action verb hand gestures, make sure go ahead and use them, but make sure they're natural and they make sense and they go along with your content. Again, don't overuse them. We don't need to attach an action verb hand gesture to every single verb or every single important word in your speech, only to emphasize the important ones. I think I mentioned this in my word emphasis video, but if you emphasize everything, you emphasize nothing. Right? And that's something very important to keep in mind, especially with hand gestures as well. Or even something like, we reverse our thinking, right? Or this leads to a months-long process, right? Things like that. Okay, you get the idea. I'm not going to do more examples. So your task is to print out your script and mark it up, writing in gestures. Again, another reminder, we don't need to gesture that often. When you're not gesturing, your hands should be at your side, not in front, not behind, but at your side. All right, so here's an example. I'm not going to go through it. As you can see, the student printed out his script, preferably double-spaced. So you have room, and he kind of figured out, what kind of gesture. Maybe he's using a right down in the first sentence, and then you say out, right up, left down, or whatever. So feel free to use, I would say in the first one, use the 8 or 10 gestures with letters I mentioned, and then that after you're familiar with that, go in and add in those action verb hand gestures. And again, these are not to be set in stone, right? As the more you practice, you might find that some things don't work as well. Some things, sometimes the gestures need changing, and it's always a process that you can revisit while you're refining and polishing your piece. So this is not the be-all and all. I don't even know if I'm getting that expression right, but you can go back and fix it. That's what I'm saying. But go ahead and get started on that. And yeah, that's about it for this video. Hopefully it was helpful to you in understanding what gestures are, but also how to use them, how not to use them. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me, ask your leaders and blinking, your captains, your coaches, etc. All right, that's about it for this video.